Hi, I'm Nadine Thornhill, sexuality educator. The other day, something extraordinary happened. I was just, meandering around the internet and I came across a soundbite from Rush Limbaugh. For those of you who may not know who Rush Limbaugh is, he's an American pundit. He comments on politics and social issues. If you've never listened to or watched Rush Limbaugh, imagine me, but the total opposite. Older white dude, intolerant, really is offended by the fact that, black and brown and other people who aren't white exist. Likes some women. He doesn't like us as human beings so much as he likes us as pretty accessories for him to look at. Thinks that everyone should be straight, everyone should be cisgender, everyone should be able-bodied, and everyone should be rich, and that those of us who are not any or all of those things have just made that choice, apparently just to piss him off. This week, one of his little sound bites kind of, made it into my news feed, and imagine my surprise when I heard this.
The only thing that matters in American sexual mores today is one thing. You can do anything. The left will promote and understand and tolerate anything as long as there is one element. Do you know what it is? Consent. If there is consent on both or all three or all four, however many are involved in the sex act, it's perfectly fine, whatever it is. But if the left ever senses and smells that there's no consent in part of the equation, then here come the rape police. But consent is the magic key to the left.
Rush Limbaugh! You totally get me. I'm gonna nitpick just a little bit. Most people don't call them the rape police. They just call them the police. The police sometimes are called when a crime has been committed, such as having sex with someone without their consent. I wouldn't be the one to call them. I would let the person who had survived the sexual assault decide how, when, and to whom they want to disclose. So if they wanted to call the police, I would certainly support them in that. But if they chose not to, I would support them in that decision too. Obviously, I'm being a smart mouth about this, but this does bring up a couple of things that I wanted to get into a little bit. First, there's this idea that a person who is liberal, or specifically a person who is sexually liberal, doesn't have any morals and doesn't have any boundaries around sex. That assumption is rooted in the idea that there are certain sex acts that are right and that there are certain sex acts that are wrong. I talked a bit about this in my video on sex positivity, where I was explaining what sex negativity is. It's this idea that there's a right way to have sex, there's a right way to do sex, and that if we can all, fit within that narrow container, then sex will remain safe and okay. And if we stray outside of that narrow set of sex acts, then we're veering into dangerous, corrupting, bad territory. People who are sexually liberal or identify as sex positive, like I do, still have boundaries and we still have morals. They just rest in different places. Now, in terms of boundaries, I have my own set of boundaries about what works for me in terms of my sexuality and in terms of having sex. I just don't expect that every other person needs to have the same set of boundaries that I do. They're personal, they're mine, they're individual. In terms of morals, I also have a set of personal morals that govern how I have sex, how I interact with other people sexually, and how I express my own sexuality. In terms of the moral standards that I expect of everyone, then yes, I'm not so concerned with what someone else is doing in terms of having sex or expressing their sexuality, but I do believe that everyone has a responsibility to make sure that if they are interacting with somebody else sexually, be that one person or 3 or 4 or 5 or 30, that everyone involved has consented. Everyone involved wants to be doing what they're doing. I also thought that how Rush Limbaugh talked about consent was interesting. And by interesting, I mean disturbing. There's been a real push for more comprehensive consent education in the past couple of years. and moving beyond an idea of consent that isn't just about no means no, and really trying to get people to understand that consent is about having sincere permission, that, you know, it's not just enough if the person sort of grudgingly says yes, or that they don't say no, for you to go ahead and have sex with them because, you know, technically they didn't say no, but really they're still not into it. That, you know, we need to really pay attention to what our sexual partners want. I am on board with that type of consent education, and on a certain level I feel like that's the easier aspect of consent education, is giving information to people who just may sincerely not understand what consent is, how it works, or what it's meant to do. When I hear someone like Rush Limbaugh talk about consent the way that he does, and I hear this tone that implies that, you know, there are cases where sexual consent is unreasonable to him, that's the harder part of consent education, because then you're dealing with a person who just doesn't believe in consent as a concept, who thinks that there are certain people who have inherently less of a right to decide what happens to their own bodies than he does. It's one of the reasons that I believe so strongly in educating children and teens about consent. I think it's really important to start teaching them about these ideas when they're young. And it's not just about, you know, sex specifically, or even consent specifically. It's not just specifically about, you know, who gets to touch my body and who doesn't get to touch my body, and when and how and where. When you look at a person like Rush Limbaugh, who is racist, who is homophobic, who is ciscentric, who is misogynistic, somebody who fundamentally believes that there are certain people in the world who are more or less valuable, you can understand why he really struggles and resents this concept of consent, because he doesn't believe that every person has innate human value, and he doesn't believe that every person has a fundamental right to decide what happens to their body. So consent really crosses over into so many aspects of our lives and how we look at our fellow human beings. If you have kids or teens in your life, you know, either in your family, or maybe you're a teacher, or you run, you know, a community youth group, and you're interested in learning how you can teach them about consent, I'm going to be launching an online workshop called Teaching Your Kids About Consent. It's going to be available as of November 1st. The cost is $40, but if you sign up before October 31st, then you get a 25% discount, so the cost is only $30. I'm going to put the link in the description box below, and I'm going to, it's up here. Again, I never know where the eye is going to be, but it's up here. You'll see the eye. That's it. I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you soon. Bye. And what you can do to help the kids in your life learn this important life skill. La, 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 la.